roll. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to City Hall Council Chambers for today's council meeting. It's December the 13th, 2016, our last council meeting of 2016. So welcome, and we are first acknowledging that we are on the unceded homelands of the Musqueam, Squamish, and Tsleil-Waututh First Nations, and thankful for that. And we are going to start this with a roll call, please, Madam Clerk.
Mayor Robertson's in the chair. Councillor Louie. Councillor Stevenson is not in the room at the moment. Councillor Deal. Here. Councillor Jang. Here. Councillor Reimer. Here. Councillor Meggs. Here. Councillor Ball. Councillor Carr. Councillor Affleck. And Councillor DeGenova. Mr. Mayor, we have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Okay, we're ready to get started with our agenda, and first on the agenda is the in-camera meetings for this week. Council is required to meet in camera later this week. The reasons and authority under the Vancouver Charter are listed in the agenda. Someone would like to move that motion? Councillor Deal moves. Seconder for that. Councillor Carr, any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. So we will meet in camera at our break at noon, unless we finish this meeting or before that. But that's not likely, given the lengthy agenda today. So we're on to minutes, and that means minutes from the last set of meetings. The first was the regular council meeting, November the 29th. Any corrections to those minutes? Mover and seconder. Seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries. Adopted. Minutes 2 are from the regular council meeting that followed the Standing Committee on Policy and Strategic Priorities committee meeting, November the 30th, 2016. Any corrections? Mover and a seconder. Seconded. And any discussion? All those in favor? Any opposed? That carries. Those are adopted. And thirdly, we have minutes from the special council meeting on the 2017 budget on December the 7th, 2016. Any corrections to those minutes? Mover and seconder. Deal and Carr, and all those in favor. Any opposed? And that carries. We've adopted all the minutes from the last meetings, 3 meetings. We're on to our consent agenda, and we have 4 communications, 3 administrative reports, 9 policy reports, and 1 other report on the agenda for consideration. And Council, we've received requests to speak to Administrative Report 3. That's the temporary heritage protection of 4255 West 12th Avenue. So should Council wish to hear the speakers on that item, that report can be referred to the Standing Committee on City Finance and Services tomorrow. Someone do that. Councillor Deal will move referral to tomorrow. Seconder for that. Councillor Carr, and all those in favor of referral to hear speakers on that one. Any opposed? And that carries. So we'll bring that back tomorrow and hear the speakers. And Council made up the recommendations in the remaining items, all of those reports collectively in one single motion. I need to hold communication 1 for a slight change there. And others, Councillor Reimer?
Yes, Mayor Robertson, Policy Report 3, please.
Policy Report 3?
Yep, 3.
Okay, Councillor Meggs?
Yeah. No, I'm for the next item.
And Councillor Carr?
Yes, thanks. I'm sorry, I didn't hear if that was Policy Report 2 or 3 that was held by Councillor Reimer.
3.
3. Could I hold Policy Report 1, please?
Okay. Okay, anybody else? Councillor Meggs, you're on for the next item. Is that right? Okay. So I'll just ask if any member of council wishes to declare a conflict of interest on any of the other items and have them voted on separately from the rest of the consent agenda. Seeing none, I'll ask for a motion to adopt the recommendations before council contained in the communications and reports, with the exception of Communications 1, Policy Report 1, and Policy Report 3, which are being held for debate and separate vote. A mover? Councillor Deal moves. A seconder? Councillor Jang. Any discussion on the consent agenda? Ready for the vote. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that carries unanimously. So we've got decisions made on the following reports. Communications 2, which is the appointment of council representatives to the Vancouver Public Library Board and the statutory committees for 2017. Communications 3 is the appointment of council representatives to regional bodies for 2017. Communications 4 is deputy mayor, acting mayor, and roster of councillors to represent council in 2017. Administrative reports. 1 is funding application, 1 we held, correct? No, that's policy report 1. Administrative report 1 is funding applications for active transportation projects. 2 is funding application for community energy project. And 3 is temporary heritage protection. We have actually referred that to your speakers tomorrow. And policy report number 2, we've approved CD1 rezoning for 530 Drake Street. That's Covenant House. And policy report 4 is the CD1 amendment for 1461 Granville Street, which is formerly 1429 to 99 Granville Street and 710 Pacific Street. Policy report 5, CD1 text amendment 1462 Granville Street, formerly 1410 Granville. Policy report 6, we approved miscellaneous amendments to the zoning and development bylaw, the downtown official development plan, and the artist studio guidelines. Number 7 is the CD1 rezoning for 1495 West 8th Avenue. Number 8 is CD1 rezoning 2720 East 48th Avenue, 6465 East 48th Avenue. And finally, the last policy report, facilitating growth in Vancouver's innovation economy, Railtown zoning and development bylaw amendments for I-4 Historic Industrial District. Okay, all of that has been approved on consent. The recommendations, thanks to staff for all the good work to bring those forward. Oh, we had the other report as well. The other report, the street naming, the new street name for Maxine Lane in the West End, which is between Burnaby and Harwood, from Bidwell to Thurlow, I believe. That's Maxine Lane now. It's official. So again, thank you to all the staff and community who have worked on elements of all of those different reports and initiatives. And we are on to, we're going to go on to our unfinished business, which is the 2017 capital and operating budget and related reports. And this is, council heard from speakers at the special council meeting. That was December the 7th, 2016, and referred the discussion and decision to this meeting. And we also sent questions, I understand many questions to staff to the budget, capital and operating budget for 2017. And we have answers back from our staff to those answers. Thank you for the answers to all of you who worked feverishly away at this in recent days to get council going. And we are going to go to, I've got Councillor Meggs as the Chair of Finance first on the agenda. And we'll go to Councillor Meggs for next steps.
Well, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The clerk has an amendment to this motion, which I'd like her to show council. And what this amendment does is deliver on the services required to deal with the overdose crisis that are within the city's area of responsibility. I won't speak long, but I will speak briefly to the overall budget because it's been a remarkable and difficult process, and I think a challenging one for staff to keep up with the issues. I don't think any of us are unaware of the challenges the city's facing. They aren't just the challenges of a rate of inflation, and they aren't the challenges of growth alone, although there is very significant growth in the city. They're not the challenges of making sure that while we manage our number of staff to a minimum level, that we pay them the appropriate negotiated increases, including the arbitrated increases. Those are all the realities of this budget, but also we have a situation in the city where housing affordability is a crisis question for just about everybody. And that is driving a large part of the capital expenditures, certainly in this budget, and a large part of the other energy that the city is directing, trying to solve and manage what's a really unprecedented housing affordability problem, both by supporting the construction of more affordable housing, but also by regulating the use of empty homes and trying to mobilize them for the rental stock, trying to make sure that short-term rentals don't have a negative impact on our rental stock, making sure that we're able to partner with other levels of government when they are now finally stepping up with resources to build social housing and other kinds of affordable housing. All of those priorities are reflected in this budget, and they're priorities that we have to deliver on at a level that we have not seen before and don't have anything to do with the rate of inflation or the number of people moving to the city, both of which are growing at the same time. I think there's a second area which I started to touch on where we're seeing enormous amount of pressure on our city staff and our frontline service providers in a number of areas. And the key one, of course, is the two key ones. We talked a bit about licensing last year, as well as the issue of making sure our streets are clean and our city stays in top condition. Both of those investments, I think, are paying off, but especially in the context of an enormous number of permits and record housing construction and record renovation levels and so on, permit applications. We need a lot more work and restructuring in improving service times in the areas of licensing and permits. And there is work going on to restructure that work and make sure it's more efficient. That beleaguered crew are also preparing amendments to liquor policy, which have been driven by provincial initiative initially, and also hoping that we'll see some clarity soon on what happens with taxi service and ride sharing. So wherever you look at the city, we're seeing unprecedented pressures. And then on top of that, since the budget was circulated and consultation began, we've seen bursting into public consciousness this appalling fentanyl crisis and the pressures that it's imposing on our first responders, on people who are working within city jurisdiction in the shelters, in our police force. And these are needs that must be met. They're not other people's job that we're doing. They're our job. And so that's why I've proposed that the 3.94% that we laid out at the beginning of this process be increased by 0.5 to deal with the continuing and unprecedented impacts of the fentanyl crisis, particularly in areas of support for first responders, frontline workers, and shelter. And my understanding and my view is that it's best to put this in contingency reserve. Hopefully the emergency will abate and we won't need it, but as from time to time, and I think very quickly, perhaps as early as our first meeting, I would expect to hear from our city staff or city manager about where and how they would propose to allocate those resources to have the greatest impact to provide relief at the front line and also to provide support for people who are hopefully recovering from overdoses and winding up in our shelter and housing network. So I'll pause there. I'm sure there'll be a lot of debate, but I would move that motion with that change.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Meggs. So I, as chair, I'm going to suggest that we deal with this in sequence of B, C, and E to G first, as they all inform the overall budget. They all inevitably inform A, noting that D had been withdrawn prior to the special council meeting. So that means we would, in terms of consideration and votes, we'd start with B, so we go B, C, E, F, G, and then come back to A, the final aggregated budget. So, Madam Clerk, we will need to move each of those in sequence like that. So why don't we start, let's start with B, which is now that all of those are moved, we need a seconder for that. Councillor Reimer will second, and we'll go to B first and foremost for consideration. And I've got speakers on the queue. You may have been to the overall, which we'll come to at the end, but we do need to go through each of these component pieces for a vote prior to considering the overall budget A. So, and Councillor DiGenova, did you want to speak to B?
Yes.
Southeast Falls Creek Energy, Neighborhood Energy Utility?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. I have the wrong order here, so I'll take myself off the queue.
Okay. B. We're basically, yeah, B, C. There is no D anymore. That was taken out. B, C, E, F, G, and then we go back to A. Yeah, those are B through, yeah. What's that? This is our normal process, approving all of the fee structures that feed into the overall capital and operating budget. So with B, Councillor Ball, did you have? Correct, on A, yeah. Unless you're making, want to make changes to the fees in B through E. Okay, Councillor Reimer to B? You're fine. Okay, Councillor Carr to B.
I'm sorry, Mr. Mayor, but you do have me a bit confused. I have B down as the Board of Parks and Recreation.
No, that's,
Pardon me? Oh, the ones way back there.
yeah, these are all the fees. We have to
Okay,
approve
sorry.
the fees,
That's
the fee structures prior to that.
fine. Okay,
And then we'll come back to the overall budget. Okay, so sounds like nobody has concerns with fees structure in B. That's been moved and seconded. So we will call the question on Southeast Falls Creek Neighborhood Energy Utility 2017. We're going to go to the voting screen on these, Madam Clerk. We are, okay. We're voting on the first of the fees on Southeast Falls Creek. And Councillor Ball, are you working there? Okay. At first vote on Southeast Falls Creek Neighborhood Energy Utility, we have 10 votes in favor, 1 in opposition. Councillor Affleck opposed. That carries. Thank you. We're on to the next, which is the 2017 annual review of water rates under the Waterworks bylaw. And that has been moved and seconded. Anyone want to speak to water rates under the Waterworks bylaw? We ready for the question on that one? That moved, Councillor Meggs and Councillor Reimer moved and seconded the whole package. Okay, we still need Stevenson, Meggs, Ball, and Affleck. Okay, votes are in, 8 in favor and 3 opposed. Councillors Ball, Affleck, and DeGenova opposed to water rates. And that carries, that motion, piece of the motion carries. So we're on to E, which is the 2017 annual review of sewer rates and environmental updates under the sewer and water course bylaw. Any discussion on this one? It's moved and seconded. No discussion, so we'll go to the vote. Councillor DeGenova, you. The wonders of technology. Okay, we've got 10 votes. Councillor DeGenova didn't. Lots of people need to vote here. Councillor DeGenova, we're waiting on you. Okay, 11 votes are in, 8 in favor, and Councillors Ball, Affleck, and DeGenova in opposition on sewer rates. That carries. We are on to solid waste utility. This is F at the back of the package, 2017 solid waste utility fees and bylaw changes. Any discussion on this one? I've got Councillor Louie.
Mr. Mayor, thank you for the opportunity. Just to say that as we go through these fees and approve of them in advance of the overall operating budget for the City of Vancouver, it would be interesting, I think, for the public to understand why there's opposition to the services that are being provided. I'm at a loss to understand some of that, given the fact that many of these costs are flow through from Metro Vancouver. These are, of course, discussed extensively at the regional level, and just last council, Metro Vancouver Chair Moore and the CAO, myself, was here to present and available to answer any questions. And so today I find that it's odd that there are votes against these fees without an explanation of why. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Louie. I have no further speakers, so we will go to the vote on solid waste utility fees and bylaw changes. The illustrious solid waste utility fees. Everyone can vote on that now. Looks like okay. We've got 10 votes in, 8 in favor and 2 opposed. That's Affleck and DeGenova opposed, and that carries. F is completed. So we're on to the last of the fees charged, as Councillor Louie says, flow through from Metro Vancouver on utilities. Any discussion on engineering fees for 2017? Seeing none, looks like we're ready to go to a vote on this one, on the final fee structure. Okay, we got that one done in record time. 8 in favor, 2 in opposition. Affleck and DeGenova opposed on that front. And that carries with 8 votes in favor on engineering fees. So we've concluded on all of those pieces, and we're back to the operating budget, capital and operating budget, the overall budget with all of those fees built into the equation now. Does anyone want to speak to Councillor Megg's motion moving the 2017 capital and operating budget? Councillor Carr first.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. First of all, may I just thank staff immensely for the work that has gone into this. I note that there are, you wouldn't know this maybe if you didn't see the memo, but there's 18 pages, I think largely my questions, and I'm really appreciative of the answers that were provided because they flesh out for me the reasons why certain decisions have been made around the budget and explain why the monies are needed, where they are moving forward, and the kind of decision making and thoughtful decision making that goes into those budget decisions. So again, I'm very grateful to the work that I know it took staff to answer those questions. In terms of the overall budget, we have an amendment that's been put forward by Councillor Meigs, and I very much appreciate that amendment. You know, there's been a lot of talk at this council table, and many emails that have come in to us as councillors concerned about a 0.5% increase in our base property tax rate. And I just have to say that I think that maybe information is really important to allay people's concerns around this increase. I guess it was the very first question I asked staff was, what does a 0.5 increase to property rate mean to individuals? What does it mean to people who are condo owners or homeowners, etc.? And the answer is this: the calculations are clear. For a condo owner, the median valued condo in the city, the increase will be around $4 a year. For an average or a median homeowner, it's $11. For an average or median commercial property owner, it's $19. This is such a small amount of money, but cumulatively, to give us an additional 3.5 million, Councillor Meigs, 3.5 million that we can add to council reserves of another 4 million that we have in place, gives us a substantial amount of money to be able to tackle what is an unbelievable crisis in this city. And I just want to refer people to the kinds of things that this amount of money will handle. Training for frontline staff, adding a community policing center in Strathcona, enhanced mental health support for firefighters and other frontline workers, additional staff support for an overdose management at shelters, additional staff to enable less overtime and time off for staff who are at the front line, like our firefighters. An additional Vancouver Fire and Rescue Service medic unit, a 3-person unit, 24/7. I mean, we know Fire Hall 2 is just under, the people there are under such immense pressure to respond to this. We're talking about 1,600 responses a month, beyond the pale. Such a small amount of money that we're asking from each individual property owner to be able to provide these kinds of services. I'm so incredibly grateful for that addition to the budget, and I think that it is one of the main reasons why I will support this budget, because I think it's very visionary to handle a crisis situation with a very practical solution. I'm very happy to see also, and the commitment came from Chief McKerney when I asked him a question in the last session, that there was a great deal of consultation, and there will be continuing consultation with our frontline workers, our firefighters, and other frontline personnel in terms of making sure the delivery of those funds to counter this crisis is well done. I am supportive of the park budget, knowing that, again, in response to a previous question of mine, that there is going to be a review next year in our quarterly updates on the capital plan to enable some extra money to come into that park budget, as was requested by the park board unanimously, of 1.2 million to be able to complete all 5 washroom upgrades. So that too has given me assurance. I am always pleased with the capital budget outline. I love the detail in the capital budget, and I am. I think it's very transparent. I love how it's laid out in a way that anybody can understand where the money's going to. I still would like more detail in the operating budget, but because I asked a whole range of questions and got back those answers, for the first time in 5 years, I will be voting for the operating budget. And I, again, really want to commend staff on being able to answer the questions that I have. But I sure would like to work on more detailed tables in the future still, so it's easy for everybody to understand. It doesn't have to come through a Q&A process. Mr. Mayor, I'm pleased to be able to support the city in this. I love the spending on, again, increased spending on housing, affordable housing, and I know I'm out of time. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carr. And Councillor Ball is next.
Yes, thank you very much. First, I'd like to thank staff, particularly Ms. Impey, who implemented a number of questions that we had last year, and has made it much clearer to read and understand where the money is going. And I am very happy to hear that Park Board will be having an opportunity to review their budget shortly. I would like to amend Councillor Meigs' motion with a motion of my own. I believe staff have it.
Let me just set you up in an amendment queue here.
Thank you very much.
And Councillor Ball. Okay.
Thank you. And do forgive my voice. It's not for lack of passion about this subject. I think we're all suffering from the Vancouver cold at the moment. It's just a simple motion. You heard from our amazing and talented and skilled workers in the cultural profession last week. They were able to tell you the truth of their lives as they're living it at this moment. I often hear people say, I don't know what art is, or I don't know how to deal with art. And I think that most of us don't realize that art is everywhere. It's everywhere in our lives. And without art, we start to lose a great deal of enjoyment in our lives, whether it's comic books and comic book art, when we have children, and it goes on to being Venus de Milo and everything that we can possibly understand. And our artists here in Vancouver do make life worth living. Those who teach art actually are able to get kids off the street. They are able to give children a reason to live. They're able to cut down on drug abuse. Certainly that has been proven over and documented over and over again about the value of arts to our community. But very often, it seems extraordinarily difficult to pull out what is actually needed for them to continue the services without burnout and exhaustion. So for that reason, they have looked at the numbers very, very carefully and have asked for a 20% increase, not this year, over 3 years. And I am suggesting that that increase be done in a stepped way because I believe it would be easier for administration to deal with those numbers in 5, 10, and 5 over 3 years so that the council has a chance to absorb that increase, but also to recognize that if that goes to the amount of organizations that are receiving funding now, that will simply stabilize them. If more organizations are added in because of that increase, we will be back to the situation that we're in now, which is too many clients for too little money. And every single one of those organizations is doing their part to raise funds in the community, to sell out their shows. And we are the princes. We are the way that, the only other way that funding can happen through us, through the Canada Council, through the BC Cultural Fund. And if we make that step forward, the Cultural Fund, the BC Cultural Fund will find it more certainly more appropriate to be able to increase the funding to the arts in Vancouver. So it is with great respect and certainly from knowing the truth of the people's lives here in Vancouver who work in the professional arts. Thank you. I don't know, was that an alarm? Anyway, I would really appreciate a serious consideration of this. It is over 3 years. It's a realistic approximation of the missing money that we are missing. I'm not saying anything negative about the funding that has gone to major projects or anything. They're wonderful, they're exciting, they make a big difference to the community. But the people that produce the people that work in the major projects eventually are the people that aren't being funded enough. So I think we have to look at the ecology of the arts, the ecology of culture here in our community, and I would recommend this as a very simple stepped process that would seem reasonable over the next 3 years. So thank you, Mr. Mayor. I appreciate your time.
Thank you, Councillor Ball. And on this amendment, I'll go first to Councillor Deal.
Yes, thanks very much. I completely agree that we need to look at the ecology, which is why the new managing director, who will be hired within weeks, if not days, announced, will have that as one of their first, his or her first mandates, is to look at our funding. I won't be supporting this amendment. I certainly do agree that we need to look at our funding envelopes, and in fact, we got a memo from staff the other day showing that we've actually increased 53% of funding for the arts over the last 5 years. However, the majority of that has not gone into the basic operating grants, which is what we heard about last week. And I believe that that'll be one of the first jobs, as I say, of the new managing director. There's also a motion in this package from Councillor Ball asking for a complete relook at how we even look at culture within our budget, within our city, that would have a strong influence on the funding envelope and how that would be rolled out. So I don't see how you can actually have a complete relook at how we fund the arts and then ask for an increase without targeting it all at the same time. So I think that it is a good time for us to be reviewing. We've done an enormous amount of increased funding for things as the pressures have come along, including the new $50,000 a year for emerging and individual artists that was asked for by community, including having embedded artists at City Hall and departments, which was supported by community. Many different initiatives that the artistic communities have asked for and supported. And this is another ask now. Let's go back and look at the operating grants and see if we were funding those appropriately for the wonderful arts organizations in our city. So I think it'll be a great initiative for the new managing director when they come in addition to perhaps looking at a completely different way of looking at how the arts and culture are embedded into every department in the city. So there's a lot of work to be done. I think it will result in a change in how we fund the arts in some ways, no doubt. But to do this now without that direction of where it should go and why, I believe is preempting the role of our new managing director. So while I certainly will look forward to that review in the next year, I don't believe doing it now is the right time because we don't know why we're doing it or what we're doing it to specifically. We need to make sure we are addressing the greatest needs with the greatest vision towards the future of the culture in the city in our minds.
Thanks, Councillor Deal. Councillor Meggs.
Thanks, and I appreciate the amendment, if only because I wanted to mention arts and culture in my first round. I appreciate it in that respect. I don't support it, and I want to explain so Councillor Ball and others understand why. It was that I listened as closely as I could to the feedback throughout the entire consultation process and online and read all the material and so on. It was a very unhappy surprise for me that so many leaders of the arts community were here with such force at the very bell, the very last minute, with a proposal which I honestly can't completely quantify, except that it's a very significant and long-term commitment to increase the operating grants, which may be exactly what's required. I just don't have the evidence at this time to say yes to it, especially given the other pressures. This is an area, and I think those of us who have been reading our mail will know that the very, very clear need and direction from Coastal Health to install a suicide fence on the Burrard Bridge has become an issue for some people who are writing in and saying, well, we should cancel the suicide fence and spend the money to provide support for overdose services in the downtown east side. The public is wary of what they think is downloading and will say and propose almost anything to avoid taking it on. I'm very comfortable there is no downloading in the propositions made in the point 5, but the debate we had or the questions and discussion we had with members of the arts community leave me uncertain as to whether or not the provincial government has finally increased its support. If so, that would be welcome. I'm not certain either what's been happening in other parts of the region where I believe municipalities do have a much stronger role to play in developing, for example, artist space. And I'm not certain either whether an approach of simply adding money will be strategic enough when we have some parts of our cultural infrastructure which, frankly, need a lot of extra support and help. They're not in the best location. Councils of the past picked locations for them that, in retrospect, were not ideal, that are struggling to make their way in a new digital world. And within our arts organizations, we have some very strong performers who would like the money to go to the next step, and some weaker ones who some would say are not going to be able to make it no matter how much additional money they get. And those are very, very tough decisions for staff to make. So my view is that Councillor Deal has hit the right mark here. We should ask for the new leadership that we're expecting to arrive in that position to give early recommendations. And I certainly want to say that while I don't support the amendment, the arts community has my full support to work with the city to achieve whatever mix of programs, policies, and funding is appropriate. We don't have the report in front of us now to make that decision, so I'm not prepared to support that amendment at this time.
Thanks, Councillor Meggs. Councillor DiGenova.
I'm more than happy to support Councillor Ball on this, and I think it's very reasonable. And we heard from a number of speakers. In fact, I would say the majority of speakers who were here were from not only cultural organizations that serve people in our city, and we consider public art a benefit. So why are we not considering cultural operating grants for the arts a benefit? That's my concern here. We've heard from many organizations that it's more than they can bear. And I think that Councillor Ball has been very thoughtful. As an expert in the field herself, I think that what she's asking for is very reasonable. And she didn't just throw this on the floor and ask for, in 48 hours, we're going to increase all of this. She's asked for this to be done over a number of years. But many of us know from hearing from the speakers, I have personal experience in this, working with nonprofit organizations, that grants almost never cover operating costs. So the larger grants you can secure for capital costs, for special projects, but that doesn't keep facilities staffed and the doors open. And when we really talk about harm reduction and vulnerability, many of these organizations serve people such as those. And I think that we do give to organizations that are very worthy here at the city, but we need to be doing more. So I think that we really need to look at prevention and what are we really doing here? Councillor just spoke about the opioid crisis. I don't want to call it the fentanyl crisis. I understand that the federal government isn't calling it that because I think that we have a crisis with more than just fentanyl. That being said, I think that it's very important to say that the arts are the heart and soul of Vancouver, and I thank Councillor Ball for putting this forward, and I'd be more than happy to support it, and I'm sure we could find other places in the budget to trim the fat to support this. Thanks.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Affleck's next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Well, if there's one thing I've learned since being elected in 2011 is when Elizabeth Ball says the arts are underfunded or the arts need something, my ears perk up, and I have the highest respect and regard for Councillor Elizabeth Ball, understanding of this community in this city. We had several speakers come to us, which I've never seen in this chamber, from the arts groups in the city, putting their point forward, saying they had been underfunded over the last 8 years because of changes to the way we administer our programs, to various other issues. So in effect, we've given them a decrease over the last 8 years. What Councillor Ball is proposing here today is a way to have a sort of catch-up to the underfunding that the parties in power here, specifically Vision Vancouver, while they tout that they are giving arts more funding, in fact, they are giving them less. And I think that the arts groups that came to us last week and said that clearly to us need to be listened to. That we in our operating budget is possible and doable, and I think it's the best thing we can do for our city. We know the value of arts in our city. The return on the investment is significant, sometimes up to 12 times, and so I will support this. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Ball, for putting this motion forward. And I really want to thank all those people who came to speak to us. As Councillor Affleck said, it's rare when we see a community send really all its heavy hitters, the key people of the leading institutions, to come to say to us with unanimity that they really desperately require an increase in their operating funding. The motion doesn't affect the budget in terms of tax increases, etc. It clearly states in the amendment that money will come from contingency or other sources of funding and be spread out over a period of time. I think that this council voting for this amendment will signal to the new staff coming on and to the whole department that this is the direction that council wants to head in. So for those reasons, I will be supporting the amendment.
Okay, I'm going to go on to Councillor Reimer.
Thanks, Mayor Robertson. I am not supportive of the amendment, almost precisely for the exact reasons that Councillor Affleck spoke in favor of it, which is that it is quite concerning that so many members of the arts community are coming to council concerned about their operating funding, and I don't doubt that they have issues with their operating funding because they're honest people who would express honest opinions on it. What concerns me is that we have clear audited budget financial information on our website that says that in 2009, we gave $11.4 million to arts groups. In 2017, in this budget, we're proposing a $30.4 million investment in arts. That is a substantial increase across 8 years. So if they're not feeling that, if they're in crisis despite a doubling of their budget, more than doubling of the budget to the arts coming from council, I don't think the thing to do is to double again or to increase again, but to figure out why such a substantial investment doesn't appear to be getting to the groups that I had understood would most benefit from it. So I think that rather than a crisis being brought to us last Wednesday being acted on this Wednesday, I think it would really behoove us to do some prudent governance work here and really look at why the more than $19 million that we've invested over the last 8 years, additional $19 million, isn't getting to the frontline arts groups, and then solve the problem of that before putting more money into the arts. I would say to Councillor DiGenova, I would love to hear the suggestions of where the fat is in the budget, if it's the increased firefighters, if it's the childcare, housing, the arts funding that's already there. Like, it's interesting to me when councillors use words like fat, but are unwilling to attach themselves to the things that they consider unnecessary in our city. So if you're going to get up and talk about fat in the budget, let's see you put your money where your mouth is and tell us where it is.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This was going to be very simple until Councillor Affleck spoke, and I'm just aghast because normally he says no, 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 no spending, but now suddenly when Councillor Ball whispers in his ear, it's a yes. So I think that's the way we should move forward. We'll go and convince Councillor Ball about something, and he'll whisper and she'll whisper in Councillor Affleck's ear, and we'll get increases in other areas. It's really a marvelous situation we've discovered today. Yesterday, I know also Councillor Carr had a representative from the West End, arts representative, was with me for almost an hour, I suppose, yesterday, and had this wonderful vision for the arts for the West End. Very extensive, wants to turn the West End into an arts center, which will be a really important development. Wants to have a champion from the West End, and of course, I suggested Councillor Deal, who is already the champion for the arts in the council. But I said to him during the course of the discussion that this is a bit difficult because every neighborhood will want to have a substantial increase in funding to help bring about a particular dream they have. And I actually, because I live in the West End, thought this was a fabulous dream. I would like to see it come about. But the point being that I think that we have mechanisms in place and we have staff coming who will be able to assess all of this for us. And that's precisely why we are hiring new staff, so that indeed the staff will be able to look at each neighborhood and look at the priorities and decide how much money we should be looking at, and whether this is going to necessitate a tax increase or whether we can just take it out of contingency funds and something else might not be able to be funded. So I certainly understand the intent here, and I'm appreciative of the folks who came from the community and spoke to us, and I think there is a need, but I am also, as Councillor Reimer suggested, baffled by the fact that we have increased it so much over 8 years, and yet it's almost sounds like it's a drop in the bucket. So I think we need to look at where's the problem? How do we deal with this? And maybe it is some kind of neighborhood centers that develop, which is not a bad idea, but that's up to our staff, our new staff, to look at that and come together with the neighborhoods and then come to council with a proposal that includes dollars. There's no dollars here. We're just talking 20% over a period of time. But we do know that's a substantial amount of money, and we need to know exactly what it's for, where it's for, and when it's for. So I can't support this amendment.
Thanks, Councillor Stevenson. Councillor Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just so that Councillor Stevenson knows what the dollars are, at $11.5 million for current operating, and it would range between $2.3 and $2.4 million of additional spend, which would need to come from somewhere. And in the report, it talks about contingency or innovation fund. I rise to speak because the contingency is designed to be a contingency for unforeseen initiatives and for initiatives that may come about as a result of an emergency. And so this is not that. It should more appropriately be embedded into the operating budget itself. And if that were to be the case, then it's, as Councillor Reimer describes when she questions the FAT question or the FAT proposition that Councillor DiGenova put forward, where then? Where would that come from? When we hear nothing in terms of reasons for voting against the fees from any of the opposition, that again shows me that there's less work than there was necessary for them to come to a position. It's interesting, and so I'll just quote George himself when he says, "George is just being George." That's a direct quote from George. And so it comes down to Councillor Affleck perhaps not reading the memo that was distributed to all of council yesterday. It's interesting that in the memo itself, it does articulate in clear detail all of the amounts of monies and increases that have happened and will be happening. And despite this, Councillor Affleck goes on to describe how there's a reduction somehow. It's exactly opposite. And so it's either one of two things, that Councillor Affleck has not read the memo, or perhaps Councillor Affleck has not...
Councillor DiGenova, you have a point of order?
5.2 section F, I believe that Councillor Louis is implying, and by words, tone, manner of speaking, I can read it all out, but he's implying that Councillor Affleck didn't do his homework, and I'm not sure that Councillor Louis was with Councillor Affleck.
I don't think he implied that.
He read his memo.
He actually said that he thought Councillor Affleck had not read the memo, which I think based on the fact that the memo clearly states there's a 15% increase in arts funding in this budget, not a cut. Perhaps that's the case, but just caution Councillor Louis on jumping to conclusions.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I am at a loss to understand the proposition that Councillor Affleck put forward that there is a cut in arts funding in the City of Vancouver, when clearly the memo that was received and produced by staff indicates otherwise. It is disappointing to have it framed in this fashion when, in fact, that's not the case. And so factually, unless we disagree with the information that's provided with us, the comments, I think, are unfactual that were made previously. Mr. Mayor, I support the arts. I support and have supported for a number of years increases to their operating grants, starting as far back as when Jim Green was on council, increased it $1 million per year. And so it's not unusual for council and members of council around this table to continue to support the arts and increase their funding. But there are other competing initiatives that require funding. People dying on our streets is one of them. Social grants, which is something that I personally am very supportive of, is also in need of significant amounts of funding as well. Our fire, our police, our other organizations, our libraries, our childcare, all these things go into the overall operating budget. And so certainly it's appropriate for Councillor Ball to single out one, but when it comes at the expense of another, it is incumbent on those advancing the proposition that one, above all else, be supported, that it comes from somewhere. and someone will be the loser, and that's something that I can't support given the immense amount of work that has gone into this operating capital budget. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks, Councillor Louie. Just before we go back to Councillor Ball, I'll say my brief comments. I won't support this for a number of the reasons already mentioned by other councillors. That I think we do need our new Director of Cultural Services, who's about to be hired, to review where we're at in terms of city investments in arts and culture. I think we all would like to see more investment across the board for arts and culture. But Councillor Reimer's point that if the city, and we've seen dramatic increase in city funding to arts and culture over the past 5 years, it's basically gone from 20 million to 30 million. That's a big jump in 5 years. And this year alone, in this budget, it's another 15% increase in funding to arts and culture, which is a very significant boost. That said, the operating grants seem to be a tough situation for many arts and culture groups, and we need to understand why that is. I really appreciate the work by staff to lay all this out and show us what's happened to the funding to arts and culture groups. We need to have this thorough understanding and not kind of lob political bombs at this one. But we need to understand why arts and culture is challenged. Obviously, affordability is a broader challenge, but when so many groups are feeling the pinch, I think it's pretty easy to pinpoint challenges with provincial funding when BC's one of the lowest provinces in terms of funding per capita to the arts and culture sector. So certainly as the province that, thanks to Vancouver's economy, is leading the country, and big surpluses are there. Investments in the creative industries and arts and culture in particular would be really important. So more support from the federal government would certainly be welcome, and they've signaled that there's more in the works. We've certainly been bumping up our investment over the years to make up for the slow or non-existent increases from the other levels of government. But there's a more systemic challenge that we face here, and I like the sentiment that we just, from our hearts, we say we need more for arts and culture, and we boost it up. But I think staff have done an enormous amount of work to put this budget together. I think it's a last-minute change. I appreciate arts and culture leaders coming out and speaking to this, and they have done that in other years. There's been a pattern of this over many years where arts and culture are struggling to make it. And we need a really careful look at this with the new team that's coming together in cultural services. I do appreciate the work. What you see in the work up here that staff did, there's a lot of support from engineering, there's a lot of support from the park board for arts and culture. Different departments of the city have, I think, really picked up the mantle of supporting arts and culture, and like never before, creating more space, creating more opportunities, and that's a big improvement. I really appreciate the commitment across the whole city organization to support our arts and culture, and that's work that has to continue. So I think we're going to see this in the new year. If we have money in contingency, we can make that investment when we have a really clear path forward, and we can work more shoulder to shoulder with the arts and culture community to keep pressure on the province and the feds to do their part. So I'll go back to Councillor Ball. Closing comments on your amendment?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, and thank you for your optimistic comments on moving forward. I do just want to mention two things that have been brought up today. This is not a surprise. All year we have been receiving information from the Arts and Policy Council. Previously to that, our Director of Culture brought forward the dire needs of the companies in the city. I did target it specifically to operating. When we look at the large dollar amount, many of those are very big projects that we are doing, such as looking at the kinds of projects that happen at the Olympics or are coming up right now in terms of the 150 plan. Those are not monies that go to day-to-day operating, and that is what is critically needed. So I am sorry, because it does sound like, once again, I love the arts, but whereas the arts solves many of our social problems, and certainly with addiction, which is something I have been working to treat people over the years, I know that arts can give someone a reason to get up in the morning, and you won't have a crisis like you have now. So I am sorry to hear that, that this will not be moving forward at this time. I think it could be rather disheartening for a new director to come in and not know that there is an influx of funding for that critical need. But we cannot pretend this is a surprise. This did not happen last week. This has been going on weekly, monthly for years now, and we haven't acknowledged it in this council. So thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to the vote on the amendment from Councillor Ball. I've got everyone but Councillor Meggs. Okay, we have 11 votes in, 4 in favor, 7 in opposition. Robertson, Louis, Stevenson, Deal, Jang, Reimer, Meggs in opposition. So that does not carry. The amendment does not carry. And we go back to the main queue. Councillor Ball, did you want to finish your comments on the overall budget?
No, thank you. I'm fine.
Okay. Councillor DiGenova.
Thank you very much. I've sent in an amendment to the clerk. And the amendment reads, further that the City of Vancouver work with the provincial and federal governments, it should say governments, sorry, to secure funding for the opioid crisis. Furthermore, if funding cannot be secured, proper consultation would precede any proposed increase in property tax to address this crisis. And I will speak to that. First of all, I'm quite concerned. We've seen hundreds. I actually haven't counted them. There could be more than hundreds.
Just a sec here. I'm going to need to put you in start an amendment queue, and let me just set you up there.
Could be.
I need a seconder for that amendment. Does anyone want to second the amendment? Councillor Ball will second. Okay, go ahead.
Thank you very much. I think that we all know that we're in a crisis, but to receive information on a tax increase of this amount of 0.5%, 48 hours before the special meeting, that's when we received it. I understand that the public understood it through the media the morning of our meeting. So really, there was no time for thoughtful consultation or input. I asked staff if we have ever had a tax increase such as this, and would there be consultation usually? As we know, there is consultation on the budget. We have special meetings. We have meetings where people can come and give their input, and they were not able to do that on this overnight increase. I'm quite concerned about that for several reasons, and one of those reasons is that we're also in an affordability crisis here in the City of Vancouver. And that affordability crisis means that a couple $100 for someone who perhaps is house rich and cash poor does make a difference. It also does get passed down to, and I'm sorry Councillor Reimer's not here, I know how passionate she is about renters, but the market passes that down to the renter, so I'm quite concerned that we're actually going to see housing prices increase. We've received hundreds, if not more, emails, and I've received, my voicemail box is filled up so many times I can't count it, with people who are concerned that they did not have proper consultation on this. We've known about this crisis for months. In fact, in our downtown east side, I think especially, not to say that fentanyl or opioids are limited to that area, but we have known about this for several months. So to have this burden thrown on taxpayers at the last minute, I think is concerning. I'm not accusing anyone of not reading their memos or homework, but it was announced by the federal government yesterday that there is a new Canadian drug and substance strategy that will now fall under the Ministry of Health federally, and I think that it would behoove us to put this on our taxpayer and expect our taxpayers to pay twice, when instead we should be going to the provincial government, who's already spent $43 million on this, and the federal government. I mean, our mayor just said for the arts and culture, we should go to the provincial and federal government. So why aren't we doing that for the opioid crisis? I'm very concerned about that. I also am quite concerned that I understand that the ambulance paramedics were not consulted on this. I think our firefighters do great work. I would like to free up our firefighters to be able to do that, and for all of our frontline first responders and workers. But that being said, we're duplicating a service. Firemedics, when I looked up Firemedics Vancouver, I find a film company right now. I'm not quite comfortable with the term yet. I have to kind of have more than 48 hours before hearing from the public to digest this. So I'm quite concerned that we're duplicating a service. I think we should be going to the federal and provincial governments. I think that there will be more money in that pot, but not if Vancouver makes a decision like this, because they'll be laughing all the way to the bank and saying, it's okay, Vancouver's going to raise their taxes and make people pay twice, and we're not going to have to do this. So I'm concerned that our firefighters won't be able to do their jobs, that the ambulance paramedics would have to, I understand from asking questions of staff, come and pick up that patient and take them to a hospital afterwards, even if the firemedics were to attend to them. So I'm very concerned about that. So that's why I'm putting forward this amendment. And some ideas on where we can trim the fat: $303,000 to oppose something that went through in newspapers and on Facebook that the electorate didn't vote for in Ontario. We could Skype into conferences instead of flying to Mexico City and other places. We could put 20 more firefighters on the roads instead of having 20 people in the mayor's office putting out fires. We could use contingency funds. Councillor Louis himself, and I quote, said it's for unforeseen emergencies. Well, this must be an unforeseen emergency because this memo came to us in 48 hours. So I would ask that you not put this burden on the taxpayer and that you listen to people. And if you don't, you did not give them proper consultation on this.
Hey, Councillor Jang is first to the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I didn't realize you had so many people back there. No, you don't. I mean, 20? A little bit of alliteration, I would say. I'm going to oppose this for a very strong reason. People are dying now. Just prior to me, just a few weeks ago, we had people being revived on the street, going to St. Paul's Hospital, and they were pronounced brain dead. I met parents who lost children. Regular folk. You wouldn't tell they were anybody different, and their children are dying because somebody slipped them fentanyl or carfentanil or some other opiate. And so we want to stop and wait and ask the federal and provincial governments for more money while people die on a daily basis. 622 people across this province right now. I've never seen in my career in health for the last 25 years this type of crisis. I've never seen anything this bad. When our provincial government has to go and open up safe injection sites and safe prevention sites completely against what the federal government wanted to do, that's a crisis. That is an emergency. That's why there's a contingency fund. Our firefighters, they do not duplicate what ambulance do. There's a very different service. But they are often first on the scene, and they have to be there to revive somebody before they die. You can't play arts or do things like that until somebody's actually alive to enjoy it. And so we've been asked by our fire service, by police, by shelter operators, we need help now. Not 6 months from now, not 3 weeks from now, now. And to try to roll back this, asking us not to approve what is a municipal responsibility, our fire, our police, our shelter operators, these are our responsibilities, is a death sentence to so many people. I've seen more people pass away in the last few months over this crisis I've ever seen in my career. And I want it to stop. And anything I can possibly do
like giving greater support so we have more naloxone kits out on the street. All the different things we do is absolutely important. When you think that most of the overdoses are happening often indoors, within SROs, within shelters throughout the province. This is throughout the province as well, but here in Vancouver, well, what are we supposed to do? Oh, hang on, just wait a little while. Someone will get to you eventually. But the other thing we don't forget is if we don't provide extra service for our fire and police, that they are tied up, and provincially the ambulances, they said this very clearly. Basic services like going and picking up people or responding to cardiac care or some other type of issue, brain aneurysms like what I suffered, they wouldn't have time to go because they're so busy. So that takes away basic services from other medical conditions. They're asking for our help because they have a need right now. They're asking for our help because people are dying. And it's not just those who are addicts, people who are addicted, but people from other conditions who don't get the care they need because they're tied up. So to talk about paying twice and all that is just a red herring. It's people's lives are at stake here. And Councillor Affleck, through the chair, often says there's only one taxpayer. I'm one of those taxpayers. I'm one. And I'm happy to put my $10 or whatever it's going to cost me more a year to save a life, because that's cheap. And so to have any suggestion that people can wait while they die is irresponsible, it's mean-spirited, and it's misplaced. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jang. Councillor Affleck is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wonder if Councillor DiGenova will be open to just a friendly amendment to separate those into 2A. So A becomes 3.4%, and then the second section becomes an I. So it separates the two from each other. Thank you. So if that makes sense, that way they're separated. To me, they're two different topics, and I'd feel. Thank you for that friendly addition. So I'll certainly support I. I think it's important for us to address this issue in any way we can. And I think Councillor DiGenova found a very good solution to dealing with that by working with the federal and provincial governments in a robust way and immediately. We can already see they're moving quickly with regard to action on that. And the hope is that perhaps our role will be lessened by the role of the federal and provincial governments, and therefore less cost to taxpayers of the city. So I'll support I. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Meggs.
Well, I really think it's good that we're having this discussion because it draws a fundamental line on values about how people respond and how they deal with city budgets, but how they respond to a humanitarian crisis. This situation is something that has been brewing for some time and reached acute levels very recently. But the motion that is in front of Council, which is now what Councillor DiGenova seeks to amend, very clearly keeps to our area of responsibility. And for those out there, and there are some who think perhaps we're now taking on ambulance service, I want to reassure them that that's not the case. This funding, if it's recommended by the city manager, would go to the firefighters and first responders, including police, who do the municipal level of responsibility. Now let's cast back and see what's been happening on the provincial front, because the proposition is that we work with the provincial government. I would say our medical officer of health and Dr. Perry Kendall have been very upfront about the nature of the crisis and proposed a medical health emergency some time ago when the number of fatalities was at 200. We're now at 622, and only this week did they mobilize a mobile emergency room which has been sitting parked somewhere in this province for the last 10 months and deploy it to divert people from the emergency rooms that are plugged with others who are suffering and people with regular health problems. And that emergency room could have been there months and months and months ago. I just have to say that it's not a political statement to be very clear that the province has been late to the game in this and hoping that we would do what we're falsely accused of doing, which is pick up the burden that is really the province's to carry. Is the province carrying its burden? Well, let's just take a look at the letter I received after this discussion began from the ambulance paramedics of BC, referring to a public report which says the need for 25 additional ambulances in Metro Vancouver is clearly identified in a report that was done by the Emergency Health Service. Perhaps Councillor DiGenova would like to bring forward a motion condemning the province for not funding that shortage a long time ago, given what we're seeing on the streets. November 5th, November 6th, out of service, but November 23rd, which was a week in which the overdose crisis was cresting again, Night shift did not have crews willing to fill the following shifts because they're burned out too, but we're not paying to get them back on the job. That is the province's job. Did not have crews to fill 243J shift, East Vancouver, 248J shift, East Vancouver, 258J, East Vancouver, 261J, East Vancouver, 245J, East Vancouver, out of service, 2 other shifts at 7:28 p.m. The following units out of service, and on it goes. So we're doing our part, but let's be clear, others could do more. And I'm glad that the resources have finally flowed to the response to what Dr. Kendall and Dr. Daly said long ago. We've had Councillor Jang in this chamber telling us what's going on as well. And this budget, 0.5, responds to what we can do and can appropriately do and can afford to do, fortunately, within our jurisdiction. But it does not seek to pretend there's no problem. It does not seek to do the job of the province. It seeks to do what I think our taxpayers expect us to do, and we're confronted with an unprecedented emergency as we are, and where we cannot really say from day to day what we're going to need to do our part. But this 0.5 will help us do our part. Councillor DeGenova's change would turn our back on the people of this city who are looking for some action.
Okay, Councillor Ball.
Yes, thank you very much. And I don't believe that Councillor DeGenova's motion is turning her back. I think she's looking at different avenues in trying to address the situation. Every few years in Vancouver, we do see a different drug that comes forward and does terrible damage. And we're not talking about that specific drug, whether it's crack or whatever has come forward. It's about addiction and what makes people addicts. And usually it's because something has happened to somebody. They've had a terrible experience, they've been abused, sexually abused, and addiction eases the pain. So I really wonder if when we concentrate on the immediate as opposed to the long term, where are the favors? And I want to ask if we were able to sit down with the federal government and the provincial government and actually come to a united plan as to how to deal with the situation that is urgent as opposed to, and a long-term situation, that perhaps we might be able to ameliorate these rises and called crises. So I would hope that we would take the time and the effort to meet with our other government partners, because certainly things like stopping the pill presses that have been pouring into the country, the raw ingredients that are brought into the country, working with border control to be increased. There are many, many things that if it could be dealt with overnight, really, in terms of making the drug less accessible. That's popular right now, but there are 3 more following them. And if we did actually work as a team, we could probably accomplish much more in a faster period of time and also spend less money doing so with more success. So that is my thought at the moment. I'm wondering if you could split the motion that Councillor Affleck asked to be divided. It's severed. It seems to have disappeared, so I would like it to see where it is.
Yeah.
There was an A and an I, but now it's just down to 1.
Yeah, A is amended to 3.4. That's what's being moved, and the second piece is I. Those would be the 2 that we consider with this amendment.
And
Yep. We're on to Councillor Carr.
Yes, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to first address one of the issues that was raised by Councillor DeGenova, which is whether or not this is a duplication of service. It is not a duplication of service. Our firefighters are the first responders, normally at the scene of any incident before an ambulance arrives. We've at this council had numerous discussions around the problems with delayed ambulance response. That is a provincial responsibility. We have the responsibility around our firefighters and supporting them as first responders, and thus it's entirely appropriate that we would look in our budget for the funding of that and not rely on what has not been a reliable ambulance service to get to people who are sometimes even dead and brought back, but certainly at risk of dying. Secondly, regarding the cooperation with other levels of government, we are cooperating with other levels of government. The forum that was held last week, thank you, Mr. Mayor, for putting that forum on around the fentanyl crisis, was exceedingly good, and Dr. Patricia Daly was phenomenal in terms of her relaying of what the province is doing. And I thank the province for coming forward in a response to this, setting up an emergency ER room down at 58 West Hastings, for example, and there are other measures as well. Again, I will emphasize every level of government has their responsibility. One of the ones that was most interesting, and I'd be interested in knowing what my fellow councillors from the EPA might think of it, was one way the federal government could help would be to change the status of illegal and illicit drugs so that individuals who are addicted have access to clean drugs, not ones that are spiked with fentanyl or carfentanil. Thirdly, in terms of the burden, I really think it's important, and I emphasized it already once, it's important for people to understand really what kind of level of burden this is. And it's not the hundreds of dollars that Councillor DiGenova mentioned when she introduced her amendment. I will repeat for you. For a condo owner, $4. For a homeowner, $11. For a commercial property owner, $19. These are not large burdens to respond to what is a life and death crisis in our city that is only escalating. And indeed, if you think about it coming forward, why so quickly, why so soon? Remember what the president of the IAFF 18 said to us, Mr. Weeks, when he came last week to speak to us. The numbers have gone up phenomenally. They are increasing exponentially in terms of responses to calls. This is a very much escalating life and death crisis in our city. It is a smart response on the part of our staff to that crisis, and I urge those councillors who would consider delaying any action to reconsider and move forward with the 0.5 minimal, very modest increase in tax burden to the people of the city.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I can't remember an issue that I have felt quite as strongly about for some time, and I hear it in the voices of some of my fellow councillors as they address this issue. Personally, I find this amendment offensive, absolutely offensive, and I don't think I've ever said that about a motion or an amendment in council before. Reminds me, in fact, of that old saying supposedly of Marie Antoinette of let them eat cake. This is absolutely turning the backs on the people who are dying in this crisis. I've also been frankly shocked by many of the emails that I've received, really shocked about what people have to say. Leave them. They've made their own choices. I've made mistakes in my life, but I've corrected them. Really, I found that this just is offensive. And this idea that we somehow do more with the provincial and federal governments than's already been done, again reminds me of the saying of Nero, fiddling while Rome burns. We have a situation that is an absolute crisis. people are dying like they have never died before on the streets, and we have men and women, first responders, who go out and do this work. Personally, I couldn't do it. I don't know how many people there are that could go and do that kind of work day in and day out. They're a very special breed of people, and it's those people, not us, not the staff, those people who are asking for this increase, this minor increase, as Councillor Carr so eloquently pointed out. We're not talking hundreds of dollars, as Councillor DeGenova would like you to believe. We're talking about minor dollars for people that she says has, Councillor Carr says, or Councillor DeGenova says they're property rich and cash poor. The people on the streets are property poor and health poor, and they're dying. And so your question is, do we have any responsibility? Of course it's a municipal responsibility, but do we have, as human beings, responsibility for those human beings who are dying? Why is this happening? There's a myriad of reasons. We don't have time to go into the long, drawn-out issues about why people might be addicted. We have to respond to this fire that we've got, and we have fire people willing to go to that fire and deal with it. But they also are having an extremely difficult time. Many of them are on huge emotional stress, and they've said that. They need experts to help them after they've dealt day in and day out with people who are either dead when they arrive or try and revive those people and get them to hospital, and sometimes seeing them again the next day and the next day and the next day. They need help, and that's covered in this minor amount, so that there will be someone, full-time staff, that will help them to deal with this crisis. And I just can't imagine how it is for the families of those frontliners when they go home every night and have to talk out. Well, I go home and talk to my spouse about my day. Undoubtedly, they do too. And that family has to deal with those horrors that they see day in, day out. So again, I find this offensive, and I will be very happy to see this struck down.
Thank you. Councillor Louis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I also, like Councillor Stevenson, I'm disappointed with this position that's been taken. For as long as I've been on council, saving lives has been a priority for this council across all political spectrums. That's why we make significant investments into housing. That's why we spent money to create shelters to get people off of the streets. And we do this not because it's our responsibility as local government. It clearly is the responsibility of the provincial and federal government. But we do this because people are dying, and that we take our share of that equation in order to stop people from dying. And we cross that line of where and how much to invest into housing many, many years ago. And the MPA and Greens and COPE and Vision have all supported this type of initiative for many years. And for today, it appears to be a different standard, that despite the people still dying in greater numbers than ever before, that there appears to be some political divide, that we don't make that investment. That is what's disappointing. And as Councillor Stevenson says, unconscionable. Now, the amendment that's put forward, I would disagree with the reduction of the services that are being proposed by Councillor Meggs in order to give our appropriate share, like we do for housing. But I do support the concept of working with the provincial and federal government. This is something clearly that needs to happen and should be done, and there's, although slow in responding to this crisis, there have been made some investments in recent days. So with that, I would propose an amendment to the amendment to read, to ensure, after the words provincial and federal government, to read, to ensure an appropriate response to the opioid crisis that does not download new costs onto municipal governments. And this is in order to clarify that we at Council have had a long-standing practice of working with the province and the federal government on a number of issues. And oftentimes we take a leadership role in that. That's what today is about, that we take our share, we take our leadership role, but also advocate for the province and the federal government to take their share, to take on what rightfully is their jurisdiction, but at the same time not allowing people to die. The motion that the amendment that was put forward appears to, well, it does move us in an opposite direction from our long-standing practice of stepping in when we are needed. And I, for one, believe that it is our responsibility as government, as an order of government, to step in when people are dying. And so the amendment is put forward to ensure that we do put the appropriate pressures on the provincial and federal governments and make it clear that we're not aligned to take on downloading from them, but at the same time, I will be voting against the concept that we do not take on our share and do not put the resources in place in order for us to take on our share. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you. So I'm going to go to Amendment Q that had some people left in it. I'll just start again. Amendment to the amendment. Councillor Jang is first to this. We need you, someone, do you second that? Okay, Councillor Jang to the amendment to the amendment.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. Like Councillor Louis, I will be voting eventually for the 0.5 increase to provide the services for our firefighters, our shelter operators, our frontline staff. We should be talking to the province. We have been talking to the province. I talk to the province. The mayor talks to the province. We've all been to the city manager. We meet on a regular basis. And we're saying to them, you know what you need to fund? You know what you need to fund? It's treatment on demand. Currently, there aren't enough addiction treatment beds. And the beds that do exist are the type where you have to be referred to by a family doctor. Now, how many here actually have a family doctor anymore? How many here actually have a family doctor anymore? Not as many as we used to have. And those types of treatments are supposed to be followed up by the family doctor. Now, is an addict who's on the street overdosing have a family doctor? Will they have a family doctor to follow them up afterwards in that treatment care? No. That's where the province should be putting the money. And that's where they haven't put the money. And it pisses me off, excuse my French, sorry, Mr. Mayor. That's where they should be putting their money. What else should they be doing? We have top research in British Columbia that says we should be cleaning up the drug supply. Provide long-term, slow-release morphine, clean heroin, so they don't have to go back out on the street and buy street drugs of unknown quality. That's what we should. The research done right here in BC, the Naomi trials, Salome, demonstrated this. So why haven't the federal and provincial government moved on it? Because they don't seem to care. So what's left? Our firefighters, our police, our shelter operators picking up the pieces of a failed addiction care system. So that's why we have to step up and do what we can under our responsibility, which is providing first responders with the resources they need so they don't go down that same track. I've seen so many of my colleagues in health get burned out, quit their jobs, get into addictions or other issues because of the burnout. That's why you just can't shift around shifts a little bit or things like that. You actually need bodies to replace people who need time to break. I get tired. We all get tired. But this is why I support Councillor Louis' amendment to the amendment, because it says to the province, this is what you need to do. Fix the addiction care. And that's something we've been saying to them over and over and over again. Not only that, we need a drug monitoring system. That's something the federal and provincial governments can do. They can actually be out there monitoring what's on the street, collecting samples and making sure that every single sample that's seized is tested, not just the one-offs, and be doing this every single day of the year. So we know what's coming. We know the changes on the streets. We just had our first car fentanyl death confirmed on November 17th. Whoever thought that would happen? I remember learning about fentanyl years ago when it was invented by a graduate student to help put animals under for research studies. That's what it was used for. Whoever thought it would show up on our streets? 60% of the samples of heroin are fentanyl, or now starting to be car fentanyl. What else should we be doing? It's really simple. The federal and provincial governments could actually be doing a coroner's inquest, or have a toxicologist or someone examining causes of death of everyone, every addict, for example. Because it's not just fentanyl that kills people. It's usually a number of different factors. And by having that coroner's look, or the toxicologist or pathologist look at that carefully and report on it, would give us an idea what people are actually dying from. Not just, it's never in my career have I seen just a person dies of one thing. It's an entire group of things. That's what they should be funding. So that's why I support what Councillor Louis put forward, is because it's saying to the provincial government, here's your responsibility, do it. We as a city will do what we have to do to keep people alive so they can actually access that care when it comes. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Jang. Councillor DiGenova.
It's a rare day that I say I will support Councillor Louis, but I do support this because the whole sentiment of the amendment that I put forward was so that new costs were not downloaded onto our residents who unfortunately, it's more than they can bear. Councillor Carr stated it's $4 per apartment owner. But when that $4 adds up with the $600 they're paying for a disabled person who needs a vehicle in the West End now for parking permit, it's not about the $4, it's about the $4 plus the $100 plus the $1,000. This is a small part of the budget, but we look at each of these pieces. Alone, they may seem affordable. But I think that we do need to look to the federal and provincial governments for those $4. So I would hope that if Councillor Louis and Councillor Jang had said that they don't want costs downloaded, that they would not be voting for the 0.5% increase. I would think that that was a downloading of a cost. I mean, in a sense, that's a health cost, just as Councillor Jang said. The Naomi trials were very successful. I haven't seen Vision Vancouver Council in their terms lobby for that specific project to come back to Vancouver. That being said, you know, the NPA, Mayor Philip Owen introduced 4 pillars drug strategy here. I think that this is something we can all get around, harm reduction and prevention, but 0.5% is a downloading. And I just can't understand why this was thrown at us 48 hours before. If we knew about this for over 8 months, if we knew about this since November 17th, since this death, if we knew about this, then why did this come to us 48 hours before? We have not consulted with people. It's easy for us to make that decision. $4 more, $10 more, hundreds of dollars more. It all depends on your property value. It all depends on that. But that being said, those costs are then downloaded to renters as well. And it really does just chip away at affordability, if we can even still talk about affordability in our city. So I am very concerned. That being said, I think that we have to do all that we can to support our frontline workers and especially Vancouver's most vulnerable citizens. But if we're doing that, then let's move forward and go towards working with the federal and provincial government. You know, I hear, oh, we're working with the federal government, we're working with the provincial government, but I'd like to know the last time our mayor or vision councillors met with the housing minister. I would like to know when that last was, because I understand that Councillor Carr and I went to UBCM. You don't have to meet with that person at UBCM, but I don't know when the last time a Vision Vancouver councillor has met with Minister Coleman, and housing is a part of that spectrum. The supportive housing piece, the mental health and addictions piece is a part of that as well, and working with our federal partners. And I think that there will be more money there, especially under this new anti-drug strategy, and the fact that it's now falling, instead of under public safety, it will be falling under health. So it won't be ping-pong back and forth at the federal level. You know, I heard Vision Vancouver say, we're going to work with the federal government. We're going to work with the provincial government. Then let's do that. So if Councillor Louie really wants to, and I heard someone before say, put your money where your mouth is, then you would not be voting for the 0.5% increase, because that is a downloading. You get charged provincially, and you get charged a civic tax, but if you get charged another civic tax to duplicate what the province is supposed to do under its jurisdiction, that's downloading. So I will support the amendment to the amendment, but I'm not supporting a 0.5% increase, especially as some councillors seem to think that this whole crisis started 48 hours ago when we all received the memo, 48 hours before the special council meeting. So I'm quite disappointed. I think that the hundreds of emails that we've received, that Councillor Stevenson said he was disappointed with some of those responses. I think people are disappointed that they didn't have a chance to comment on this. Perhaps they could have got behind it, but they had no time. They found out about it the morning of our meeting, and the speakers list, I understand, had already closed. So I'm very concerned. I'm concerned that we're not consulting with people. And maybe if we brought people on board and we really did have some more awareness about this, the type of people that Councillor Zhang's talking about, that you wouldn't know that they were drug addicted, maybe they would be more aware of this. So for that reason, I'm supporting the amendment to the amendment.
That is your time.
Thank you.
Councillor Reimer.
Thanks, Mayor Robertson. Well, I would agree it is offensive, but it is a legitimate public policy debate as to whether or not we as a council want to accept downloading from the provincial government. We have for housing for a number of years. We have for childcare for over 25 years. We're the most invested and one of the only municipalities that invest in childcare because it is a provincial responsibility, but we've taken that on. Arts, the very debate we just had on the other amendment, the reason $19 million more from the city isn't filling the hole, and this wasn't brought up, is because of massive, massive cuts to the arts by the provincial government and by the federal government over the last decade, and that's why there's a giant gaping hole in arts funding. And yet we not only have taken on that hole, but just a few minutes ago, Councillor Ball and DeGenova were strenuously advocating that we take on more of a property tax burden to further fill the hole left by provincial and federal downloading on the arts.
Councillor DeGenova, you have a point of order.
I just feel that words were put in it's section 5.2, but I don't believe Councillor Ball or I had talked about a property tax increase at all. I think that we were looking within the budget, but that I won't speak for Councillor Ball, I'll only speak for myself. I didn't suggest any increase. Thank you.
Councillor Reimer, it's back to you.
Thank you, Mayor Robertson. So further to that, we have debates in this council about whether or not to set downloading from the provincial government. I have been pleased to see councillors who are speaking against stepping in and saving lives accept downloading when it comes to childcare, housing, arts, and other things that are properly the responsibility of the provincial government. And I do think, personally, it offends my moral code that they are not willing to do the same thing when the province and feds have been slow to react to a healthcare crisis that is killing people at a rate never before seen in the city of Vancouver. I understand the points Councillor Ball made, that there are drugs that come and go, but this drug is the worst serial killer that we have seen on the streets of Vancouver ever. And to not act at this point, in my opinion, is morally wrong. It is a legitimate debate, though. If one chooses not to act, it's their conscience that guides them and how they live with that. I did want to thank Councillor Louie for the amendment. The kernel in this motion that Councillor DeGenova brought forward to cut funding to save lives that is worth saving is the advocacy piece. We seem to all agree that the provincial and federal governments have completely failed.
Councillor DeGenova, I'm going to just caution you on interrupting the meeting repeatedly with points of order.
I understand, but words again were put in my mouth.
No, I'm going to rule against that. I did not hear words put in your mouth. Thank you very much. Back to Councillor Reimer. Councillor Reimer?
Thank you, Mayor Robertson. So further to that, in this motion, which proposed cutting the money that Councillor Meigs had put on the table to respond to the crisis, the kernel that is worth preserving is the continued advocacy to the provincial and federal governments. I thank the Mayor, Councillor Jang. I know that many of our staff have worked tirelessly over the last 7 months since this was first, it was clear that this was more than the usual spike that happens when new drugs come to the street, but a very full-scale crisis in our streets have brought in the provincial and federal governments. We saw just yesterday some significant movement, but if we're going to see more of it, we're going to need to continue to advocate and for them to understand that every time we do accept $1 of downloading to save lives, it's on their hands that that's happening. So I appreciate Councillor DiGenova having flagged that in the motion, and I appreciate Councillor Louis' efforts to make it intelligible at a level that we can do the advocacy properly.
Thank you. Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks very much. Well, and I quote Councillor DiGenova that she believes that we must do all we can do for the front lines and for the front line responders and for the vulnerable. But listening to her speak, those words are absolutely hollow. She wants to reject what the frontline workers and responders are asking. And they're the ones who are saying this is a crisis. Now, normally, when you have a crisis, you have to respond immediately. And I would suggest that's our jobs to make those decisions. We're the ones that have to look at the situation when our front line says to us, this is a crisis and we need this amount of money for both responding and for our own emotional and mental health, and we have to make that decision. A crisis doesn't allow you to go out and do a referendum in the city, or doesn't allow you to bring in people from throughout the city and have a vote. We had an open house here that was brought together rather hurriedly and was helpful. But to suggest somehow that we poll the entire city or do a referendum on the city as to whether we're going to have a 0.5% increase on what Councillor DiGenova says is the burdened taxpayer, it's $4. Now, I'm a renter. If my rent goes up as a result of this, I'm happy for that to happen. I'm happy that money will go in to helping people who are at the moment dying on the streets. So this came to us, as Councillor DiGenova continues to say, 48 hours before. Because 48 hours before, our first line responders said, hey, we've got a crisis and that crisis is now and you need to respond. And that's precisely what we're doing. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thanks. Councillor Affleck is next.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll support the amendment. I think that it's important to always work with the provincial government on any issue that to avoid downloading. It's something that we all know, as Councillor Reimer's pointed out, that many different sectors of our city are being downloaded by not only the provincial and federal governments, but also by Metro Vancouver, as we heard from Councillor Louis earlier about the costs of all the different fees that are sent to us that we're basically having to pay for an entire region above and beyond what we should be paying, in my mind. The issue really, though, is the timing, and I think it's important for us to work with the provincial and federal governments to avoid this downloading. At the same time, I think that to add a 0.5% tax increase in a sudden manner as we have in the budget seems out of step to the process. I think that we have several mechanisms. If there's an immediate crisis with fentanyl, we all know, because we have these emergency motions that come to us, really, that funds are found. at the city, some magical way, usually related to the line item timing uncertain, which is my favorite one, the mysterious timing uncertain line item, or we have funds in the budget that are built for this kind of crisis. If the crisis is now, why are we talking about a budget in 2017? That means the money's not available till 2017. You're talking about today, you're talking about yesterday, you're talking about last month, that 0.5%, that 3.5 million or whatever it might be, 1.5 million, 1 million, 500,000. We actually don't really know the exact need because that 0.5 is going towards into a fund. That we don't really know exactly what that number is, but I think it's good to work with the province and the federal government to say, stop the downloading. There's only one taxpayer, as we all know, and I always say that, and I know it sounds cliche, but it's true. The money only comes from one of us, but why are we taking the heat for so many different issues in this city when we shouldn't be? We should put the heat on the province and the federal government, whose responsibilities include health care. And the issue of fentanyl is definitely out beyond our scope of work for the most part, and I think Councillor Louis' amendment is strong and related to that issue, but also on many other issues. So I support it, but I can't support the 0.5% increase in the current budget because I think there's funds that we can find immediately now, and I would like to see a motion to that effect, and we can debate that separately about the money in this year's budget, 2016. Is there money that we can find right now to deal with the problem? Not in 2017, December 2016. That's where we are right now. Let's deal with it today, not in January or February. So where's that motion? Where are we dealing with that? How come that hasn't come to Councillor Jiang? So I'll support this, but I won't support the 0.5%. So I'll support the two portions, but of course, as you know how I feel about the overall tax increase, I have a challenge with that, but we'll get to that later. Thank you.
And Councillor Ball to the amendment.
Yes, just briefly, I'd like to thank Councillor Louis because I think it is a really sensible motion that we move forward with the other levels of government, because I think there are many other ways that the importation of drugs could be solved here in the city, and I appreciate his motion. Thank you.
Thank you, and I'll just weigh in with my very strong support for Councillor Louis' amendment. I think it's essential that we ramp up our strong advocacy to the province and the federal government, but particularly the province on with their primary responsibility for healthcare in BC. This is so directly tied, as Councillor and Dr. Jiang says, to totally inadequate funding for treatment. We need to have treatment on demand here in BC. It is one of the 4 pillars that has not been addressed significantly over many years, despite advocacy of the city for many years and several administrations. We have not seen enough investment in treatment and detox on demand. We hear it from our police every day that they have people coming to them asking to get detox, and there's nowhere to go. There's nowhere for our police to take people suffering from addictions who are ready to get treatment. And when people are ready, it has to happen urgently. And we don't have that support, and that's directly tied to what were probably over 700 overdose deaths in BC this year now. As we saw, the province's chief coroner, Lisa Lapointe, said we're on track to hit over 750 deaths due to overdose of illicit drugs in BC this year. So we've left that 600s number behind, and we're going to be well into the 700s, which is just staggeringly tragic. Treatment has to come. We need to see more funding for paramedics in BC. We've seen very clear statements from paramedics and the strain and stress on them. The number of paramedics that have to end up in Vancouver, and particularly in the downtown east side, dealing with the chaos on a daily, nightly basis, rather than serving their home communities. They're pulled from as far as Pemberton and Hope into the city here to deal with this crisis. So we've got to see more support from the BC government for treatment, for healthcare, for paramedics, and make sure that we're working upstream to deal with this crisis and those who have facing severe addictions. And that combination with mental illness and homelessness, I mean, we have a perfect storm right now that's created this crisis. And it goes right back to the BC government and inadequate funding for healthcare and for enough affordable housing to address homelessness. Those two pieces are so essential, and I appreciate Councillor Louie bringing this forward to sharpen our focus on the important advocacy we need to do to stop the downloading, but more importantly to keep people alive and safe and rebuilding their lives. Councillor Louie, closing comments on your amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. It appears as if we have agreement, that it appears as if at least the vote will support the amendment to the amendment that I put forward to make it clear that we want to work with the provincial and federal government. I appreciate some of the comments from all of you in regards to that. Working with, that is the key word, with, and Councillor Ball stressed that in her closing statements as well. The issue, I think, is this concept of downloading, and it's described in two different ways today. One is that we work with and put some resources into the equation to lever, to work with and show our commitment, not just speak the words, but show our commitment through actions. And that's what the proposition as put forward by Councillor Meggs intends to do. What I hear, though, from Councillor DiGenova is that downloading we can't accept it. This is something that should be stopped. And that would preclude the opportunity for us to show our commitment to dealing with this crisis. I hear Councillor Affleck say, where's the motion? Where is it? Immediate. And he would like to see a motion to more immediately deal with this. Councillor Affleck has the opportunity, for those watching, has to move a motion himself, but haven't seen the motion coming from Councillor Affleck. So if he'd like to see a motion, move the motion. That's the issue. If it is of such import, then take the action. That's what the majority, I think, is intending to do with this. Take action. And I hope that with that, we can stop the disconnect between accepting our responsibility and this perhaps grandstanding in terms of keeping the prospect of our taxes lower at the cost of people's lives.
Okay, thanks, Councillor Louie. So we're going to go to vote on the amendment to the amendment. Councillor Carr, I think you're the only one that hasn't. There you go. Okay, we got 11 votes, all in favor. Unanimous support for the amendment to the amendment. So we go back to the amendment itself. Councillor Louie.
Just briefly, Mr. Mayor, I will speak against the conversion of the 3.9 to the 3.4.
Okay, and anyone else I've just got Councillor DiGenova on the amendment to 3.4, and I'll go to Councillor DiGenova.
Well,
final comments?
Just final comments on the entire amendment. I'm surprised that we just heard that we don't want to download costs, but now we're speaking against downloading 5% of those costs. So we're at 0.5%, 0.5%. I'm very concerned that actually sends the wrong message, but that's me. I thought we were moving forward in a positive direction. I was hopeful, sitting here crossing my fingers. But as we move forward here, I'm looking at the fact that this is indeed downloading of costs. And, you know, it was promised by this government that homelessness would be solved by 2015, and I never saw a tax increase proposed for that. That being said, I think Councillor Affleck had some valid suggestions about looking within our budget, and I've already listed off a laundry list of places I think that we could find some money. But I certainly think that we need to look within our budget instead of asking our Vancouver taxpayers to pay twice. That being said, I want to clarify that I never asked for a referendum or a poll. I asked for consultation. That's what we do. And Councillor Stevenson suggested I ask for a poll or a referendum. We have workshops, open houses, I've attended them before, where the public comes and they get to give input on our budget, on the money we ask them to pay as our bosses who elect us. So I think that it's short-sighted not to have included that in this process if we knew about this 8 months before. So for that reason, I certainly supported Councillor Louie in not downloading the costs, but by not supporting removing that 0.5% from the amendment, I understand that he's actually downloading those costs to the Vancouver taxpayers. So for that reason, I won't be able to support the 0.5%, but I understand procedurally I had to change to take out the 0.5% that Councillor Meggs, when he moved the motion, changed it to 3.9%. So I had to procedurally change it back to 3.4%. So that's the reason I will vote for that, because I want to change it back. That being said, I will certainly vote for aye because I think we should be working together. That being said, if councillors do vote for the 0.5%, instead of going together, the province and the federal government on this, we'll be sending the message that we'll just pick up the tab every time here. And I'm concerned that we won't get those extra ambulances, those 25 that we need every day. And we did receive a letter from the ambulance paramedics, QP 873, I believe, opposing the 0.5% increase for the reasons stated and laid out in the past few hours, or at the 18th hour. That being said, I think that we need to support all of our first responders, including our firefighters and our police officers. And for that reason, we need to go to the province together. So for that reason, I do not support the 0.5% tax. Thank you.
Okay, so I had 3 councillors go on the queue after Councillor DiGenova.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We're voting on this amendment as amended by Councillor Louie's motion, which is to go to 3.4, and the amendment to direct our advocacy on the province and federal government. So that is Councillor Meggs and Stevenson on here, but Councillor DiGenova just spoke in her closing words. Yeah, we'll come back to the original motion and you, Councillor Meggs, at that point. So we'll go to the vote on the amendment as amended. First of all, we'll be voting first on the first piece, which is 3.4, the amendment to go from 3.9 to 3.4. Yeah. Okay.
A point of clarification, Mr. Mayor, I sent a question to the clerk. I just wanted to make sure that after we vote on the amendment to A and the amendment that now has been severed into A and I, we will be going back to the main motion and voting on the main motion as amended.
We will be doing that, as I said about 30 seconds ago. So voting on the 3.4 amendment. Okay, we have all 11 votes in, and there are 3 in favor and 8 in opposition. Those 8 being Robertson, Louie, Stevenson, Deal, Jang, Reimer, Meggs, and Carr in opposition. So the amendment to 3.4 fails. And we're on the second piece as amended, second amendment as amended by Councillor Louie. We can vote on that.
Can we see it? Oh. I'd like to see it.
That was up on screen.
Can we see it on screen, please?
The last half hour of debate is what we were considering. It was on the screen right here since about 11 o'clock. Okay. Councillor DiGenova.
I haven't seen it yet. I'd like to see it on screen.
We were just debating that for the last half
No,
hour,
I
and
just want to see what I'm voting on before I vote. Kind of like reading a document before you sign it.
it was up on the screen for a good while there. And it reads that the City of Vancouver work with the provincial and federal governments to ensure an appropriate response to the opioid crisis that does not download new costs onto municipal governments. Okay, 11 votes in, 11 in favor, so we have unanimous support for that amendment. And that means we go back to the original queue on the budget motion as moved by Councillor Meggs and Councillor DeGenova. Did you want to wish to speak more? You moved your amendment, and anything further?
Not at this time. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Ball. Okay, Councillor Reimer.
Thank you, Mayor Robertson. I did just want to draw attention to a couple of other things in the budget that I think are particularly noteworthy and worth celebrating. Childcare, this budget will invest the largest single-year investment ever for the City of Vancouver in childcare, $14.6 million. That will go to support new childcare centers being built, as well as the subsidies that go to operating for centers that need it either because of the financial circumstances in the neighborhood or because of the infant-toddler mix. So I'm very proud of the work that the city has done to fill the gap left by other levels of government in that regard. It's one thing to have debates about downloading. It's another thing to watch families who could otherwise be working and could be participating in the economy and being able to access better housing because of that work, but for the lack of a childcare space. So I'm very happy to see that that money is going in. Of note, that's more than went in the last term in a single year we will do, and substantially more than went in the 2006 to 2008 period. I'm also very pleased to see the investments in the Downtown East Side Local Area Plan. This is the first full budget year since we passed that, and there are big investments that Council had already approved in community economic development, as well as streetscape and public spaces and healthcare provision, which again, although a downloading from provincial government, a very essential and critical part of implementing that plan at the community level. The last thing I wanted to point to was the public realm cleanliness investment. This is a substantial new amount of money that is going into dealing with litter and abandoned waste in our community. I know that our communities, neighborhoods across the city have dealt with increased challenges related to street litter as well as abandoned waste in alleys and in some vacant lots. So this initiative by our city workers, not just to clean those up, but to look at what the long-term solutions look like. I know that Council's heard me say many times that we can't just, the costs in this area continue to rise, and it is an unsustainable phenomena. So the critical thing to me is to keep the streets clean, but also look at what the long-term solutions are. And I know there's some very cutting-edge work that our staff have been working with through the zero waste strategy consultations on what that will look like moving forward. I want to add a final thanks to staff. I know that budgeting in the modern era is a big challenge. I mean, we've talked extensively about what it's like to absorb so many downloaded costs from other levels of government, but just also community expectations of consultation at both the neighborhood and demographic level. There's a wide divergence in opinions about where money should go, and I appreciate the really, really significant efforts that you make to try and get out to community, hear all those opinions. When you read the survey, people want no new taxes, all of the same services. So pretty much want a lot more for a lot less. And I think that you've managed to achieve that as best as is possible in this budget. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you. Councillor Carr, you looks like you already spoke to the budget. You used up your time.
I used up my whole time?
Yeah, you did, and then
All right.
some.
Thank you.
So, Councillor Louis.
Mr. Mayor, thank you. In hearing the conversations that have occurred in regards to the opioid crisis and the issues related to downloading, of concern for all of us, but of significant difference in opinion of what level and what our contribution rate would be to initiatives that are not traditionally within our sphere of jurisdiction. I am tempted, Mr. Mayor, in regards to the overall budget to ask for separation of each and every component to give the opportunity to the opposition to vote for or against the propositions that are embedded within this very large $1.319 billion operating budget, in addition to the capital components. But I will resist that urge on the larger component pieces. But that may be the only way that we can understand what the opposition supports or doesn't support, because it appears that at least one has publicly spoken out about voting against the overall budget without articulating what it is that is offensive or what should be changed, without moving amendments to reduce the cost, prioritizing the component pieces of this budget. But to rather than force the suffering of council through a long and arduous process to glean some idea of what the opposition is thinking, I would encourage the opposition to talk about what it is that is offensive and the reason on why they are going to vote against this. What component pieces is offensive? But I will take the opportunity, Mr. Mayor, to ask for separation of two important pieces in my mind. Under G, where it is the council approval for recommendations D, E, and F, and approve the 2017 capital budget, the expenditures, you'll see the top line item on page number 3, housing and childcare. Clearly, as articulated, that these are issues of downloading. I'd like the separation to vote a separate vote on these two issues of importance, housing and childcare, and test the House on whether or not the NPA actually accept downloading, accept that we are spending $80 million on housing. We're spending $14.6 million on childcare. Downloading is what is occurring. But let's see what they do. So I'll ask for separation of those two particular components. My suggestion, Mr. Mayor, is that we vote on them first as separate items before we look at the overall budget, because depending on its passage or failure, it affects the numbers.
And Councillor Louis, just to be clear, you're requesting separation of F?
G.
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 And G. F.
G is
just G. Okay.
G for just the top two items, housing
right.
and childcare.
Okay. I don't know we can separate within G. I think we can separate G, which aggregates the capital budget, which includes housing and childcare as major components.
Well, the issue is that I'd like to vote specifically on housing. And I think we can separate out, depending on whether the component pieces, those line items pass or fail. That's why I suggest that we vote on them first, because it will affect the resulting calculation and numbers. If it passes, there will be no change. I expect it to pass. I expect that enough of my colleagues will support housing and childcare and accept this level of downloading. But we'll see whether or not the purity of zero downloading prevails for some of the councillors.
Okay, I've just got to check in with Madam Clerk here on. Okay, we'll check with. So we'll come back around. We'll check with Finance just on being able to separate those for separate vote, and we'll go to Councillor Stevenson.
Thanks, Mr. Mayor, and thanks, Councillor Louis. I find that really helpful because we all have struggled with the issue of downloading, and there are realities that come along that force us into these positions, but it's good to be forced ourselves, therefore, to be really clear about where we stand. And personally, I do accept this level of downloading, particularly for housing, particularly for childcare, which I think is really significant in this budget. And if, as Councillor DeGenova wants to call this point 5 another piece of downloading, I'm willing to accept that. Because in all these cases, people's lives are on the line. We need the housing, we need the child care, and we certainly, due to the crisis, need the fentanyl care. I think I haven't much more to say other than I'm obviously voting in favor. But I thought this discussion today was really an important one, and it really did, it was one that separated us. And one came down on one side or the other, and it's pretty clear to everybody who's listening which side we're on here when it comes to the vulnerable and the dispossessed. And I was quite struck in Councillor DeGenova's last speech when she said that she was just sitting with her fingers crossed, hoping that things would go her way. And it seems to me that's exactly a perfect analogy.
Councillor DeGenova, you have a point of order.
I did not say that things would go my way. I would ask Councillor Stevenson to find that on the tape. I did state that I wanted us all to work together with the federal and provincial governments, but I did not ever state in my last speech that I wanted things to go my way. So I wanted that to be a point of clarification under.
Thank you, Councillor DeGenova.
Well, actually, your direct quote was that you remain seated with your fingers crossed, hoping that your amendment would prevail. So that would, I would presume, would go your way. But that's a different way of coming at it. At any rate, I thought that the analogy of the MPA sitting with their fingers crossed, hoping that somehow or other the fentanyl crisis would take care of itself without us having to commit any funds to it. I thought that was an exact analogy for what the MPA's stance is on this, and I will certainly be looking forward to their vote on downloading as suggested by Councillor Louis, because I think that once again will make it pretty clear where the lines are drawn. But I'm very much in favor of this budget. I think it's an excellent budget. I want to thank the chair, finance chair, Councillor Meggs, for all of the work he's done, which I know has been substantial with the staff.
Thank you. I'll go to Councillor Affleck.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Before I start, I'd like to add a J. You type J. I think we're on J now. I sent the clerk a couple of versions, but I think you might have the latest one.
So we'll go, before you do that, we'll just go to an amendment queue. And Anita, you want to move a J?
Yep. Up there, yep. The right one? Yeah, there's a couple of typos in there, but writing it now. I think that, based on my point related to the fentanyl issue in Vancouver and the fact that this, while today we're talking about the 2017 budget, we have heard from councillors and many people in the city that there's immediate action needed. And what I'm requesting is that we add to the budget a J where we look to the partners, federal and provincial government, to match a $300,000 commitment to the issue to deal with it today. If not this week, or we can have this come to council and the report is asking for staff to quickly, I know it's a lot to ask for staff, but to ask to look to our current budget year and see if we can find funds that are available in the budget in 2016 to deal with this crisis that we have, and to ask our partners, our fellow governments, the federal and provincial government, to step up with $300,000 each. So that gets us $900,000 in funding that we can, as part of the staff report, and perhaps some detailed analysis could be provided how that money would be used to deal with this crisis. And then that sets aside, in my mind, in the overall budget, but this is to deal with the crisis that we talked about today now. I think, as we heard from Councillor Jang, we can't wait. I think that's true, but I think we also have to pressure the federal and provincial governments to step up with us as partners on this issue, and this will put it in context for them. It also does not embed this into the operating budget. It's a one-time ask of our taxpayers, and within a budget that we already have approved. I think there are line items that we can find this money. Timing uncertain for one. The others are the innovation fund, the most mysterious fund of all. And so I'm looking for support here for this. So that's
I have a point of order, Councillor Meggs.
Yep.
Well, I think it's out of order because he's seeking to vary a decision we made to establish the current year's budget some time ago. It would be in order as an inquiry under other matters or as a motion, an emergency motion perhaps, if Councillor Affleck wishes to do that. But it's not consistent with the direction of the report here, which is entirely to deal with next year's budget. So to graft it onto the tail end strikes me as a mistake in procedure, and that's my submission.
Yeah, I'm going to actually agree with that point of order, Councillor Meggs. It is completely out of step with the matter that we're considering, the 2017 budget. So I'll rule it out of order and recommend to Councillor Affleck that he, if he wishes to bring that back as urgent business later in this council meeting as new business, you absolutely have that opportunity, but it's certainly not directly tied to 2017 capital and operating budget that we're considering here.
Mr. Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Meggs. I appreciate that, and I'm happy to ask the clerk to move it, if we can, to the end of council today for new business, and we can discuss and debate it. I would say it is urgent. We only have one council meeting left. It's a backup council meeting for next week, and perhaps we can deal with this if there's other issues, perhaps, but maybe this can be a one issue that we deal with. So I'll move it to next week.
Okay.
To later in the council meeting, I mean,
for
debate.
We'll come back to that later. Okay. Did you want to speak further to the budget?
Thank you. Well, you know, I think that the point of that addition and perhaps motion at the end of council is, I think, to deal with, you know, what is obviously a very emotional issue, a very hot issue in our city. Clearly, we all care, I think, about this as a problem in our city, in our province, in our country, and everywhere. It's clearly a problem. But is it our duty at this point in time, when we're discussing budgets, money, to get overly emotional about one or any issue? I think it's important for us to stay, to be somewhat crass, but we have to be, we're talking about the money of our city and how we make decisions on how that money's spent. I understand that this is a crisis, but is it appropriate for us to be dealing with it now as part of this budget? I would say and argue that there are other mechanisms, as I have presented for the end of council today, to deal with this issue in a more logical way and a much more fair way to the taxpayers of the city. So setting that aside, I also have a problem with this budget. I think everybody's aware of the significant tax increase. The original budget stated a 3.4% tax increase, with an addition 0.5 for the crisis issue, puts it up to 3.9. The fees from for water, sewer, and so on averages out to 1.2. We're talking about a 5.1% tax and services increase to the people of this city. I think this is unfair. If we look historically, over the last 10 years, 8 to 10 years, our taxes and services fees have gone up by 30%. And that's based on today's dollars. 30% increase in cost to the taxpayers of the city. Now that's not even, that's an average. Some people's taxes have gone up significantly more, depending on where you live and how your home is averaged. It's very complicated and mathematical stuff, but Councillor Carr's comments earlier are I think, misguided, and in that they don't really tell the story. $8, $20, $50, some people's taxes have gone up hundreds, if not thousands of dollars. We have the population increase, to give you put it in perspective, in that same time period has gone up by 10%. So our taxes have gone up 3 times the pace of the population of this city. I don't think that is good management of our funds. I don't think that's a way we should be managing our city. To argue that our city is growing and therefore our taxes should go up, I would agree with that, but within reason. I have always stated that a rate of inflation tax and services fee increase should be our goal. And that would probably average out over the last 8 years to about 2% per year. So we're looking at about maybe a 16% increase overall. Taxes, property taxes, and service fees. So to see in 1 year a 5.1% increase overall to the taxpayers and businesses that are even harder hit is, I think, unfair at this point in time. I think we are heading towards perhaps a more stale economy in this province. I know things are booming now, but I'm worried that we are facing some challenges down the road. I don't think we think this economy will always be booming. I think that's naive to think that. I think that the capital budget also is pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable. We are now servicing our debt. Almost 10% of our budget is to service the debt. While we have fancy graphs that show it's sort of averaging out, it's still going up. That graph I find deceiving that we get in our budget because it shows that it starts to go down in about 2022. That means for the next 4 to 7 years, we're going to have continual increases in cost to our servicing our capital debt. We have our operating budget and our capital budget. Both feed on each other. They both rely on each other, but they all come from the same place, and that's the people of this city, whether it's debt that we have to service or whether it's money we get from the taxpayers, from the property taxes, or from the services we offer. I am not supportive of this significant increase, and I can't support that. I would like the budget severed into chunks. There are parts. I'm proud to see that the Park Board has got a 2% budget increase. That's the kind of budget I like to see. 2% seems fair. I will support that. And there are a couple other things in there, but if the mayor could sever the budget into components, I would appreciate it. But for today, I can't possibly support a 5.1% tax and services increase on the people of this city. It's just not fair. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Affleck. And I'll make my comments prior to going back to our Finance Chair, Councillor Meggs, for the closing comments. Yeah, we're going to need, I am chairing the meeting. Thank you, Councillor DiGenova. And we are going to need, before I make my comments, a motion to extend the meeting to complete the business. Moved and seconded. And I'll just suggest we wrap up on the 2017 budget, which we're 2 speakers and the vote away from, and then take our break for in-camera and lunch. And we'll come back to finish the balance probably at 2 o'clock. Ballpark. Okay, 2 o'clock to come back to council and finish the balance of the agenda. So let's move and seconded. Any discussion on extending the meeting? All those in favor? Any opposed? Councillor DiGenova is opposed to extending. Yeah. Okay. All those in favor, we had all in favor, and Councillor DiGenova opposed, and that carries. Okay, so we'll finish up, before taking the break, we'll finish up the 2017 budget piece, and I will make, I'll make my comments. I'm strongly in support of the 2017 budget as moved by Councillor Meggs. Thanks to Chair Meggs of the Finance Committee for leading council on this regard, and a huge thanks to all the staff on all departments who've worked to bring us a budget that I think is very solid and fair. It responds to the difficult situation as with affordable housing and fentanyl overdose crisis, with very significant investments that are urgent. But more importantly, it covers the bases. As a city, we're growing rapidly. Our economy is booming. We lead the country. We're doing great work to improve quality of life. And at the same time, we've got challenges we have to grapple with. And I'm very happy to see the largest affordable housing investment in Vancouver's history, an $80 million investment in the capital budget. And happy to see investments in childcare and this significant investment in public safety. Public safety is paramount in Vancouver. The additional funding to ensure we're doing everything we can as a city to deal with the fentanyl overdose crisis is essential and urgent. And we look forward to much greater support from the provincial and federal governments to deal with that extraordinary tragedy. We need that broader support for fire and rescue service who've been doing a heroic work on our streets, for police and community policing, for the condition of our streets to improve in 2017. This additional investment is very important. I am happy to see additional investments in Vancouver Public Library and their great work that's continuing, and pleased to see the boost for the Park Board. And I just want to recognize and congratulate the new chair, Michael Weave of the Park Board, and Vice Chair Aaron Shum, Catherine Evans from the Park Board's here as well. Thanks for bringing forward your budget, and we've got another piece of work to do on improving the public washrooms. Thanks for highlighting that as well. So I think we've covered a lot of the major issues on livability. It means a bigger increase than we've seen. We've kept tax increases very low for many years, right around 2%, and among the lowest in the region. We do have among the lowest property taxes per capita in the country as a city, and that's, I think, certainly helps with our competitive advantage and is a factor in why our economy is booming. But times like now, we have to step up and make sure we've got adequate resources to grow and respond to the incredible pressures we face on affordability and with public safety. So I'm very pleased to support this and look forward to this being another big year for the city of growth, but in turning the corner on our toughest challenges for our most vulnerable population and affordability generally, and being able to continue to lead on being a green and resilient city. That's really essential to who we are in Vancouver, and it's great to see that remain a key priority for us. Again, big thanks to staff, and big thanks to the community and all the people who weighed in and helped us shape this budget and make it appropriate for the times. Councillor Meggs, to close.
Well, thanks, Mr. Mayor. I'll be as brief as possible because a lot has been said and a lot of very important comments made. But I do think that in developing this budget, I've been impressed, and I know that Councillor Stevenson, who's the vice chair of this committee, has been very impressed as well by the way the staff have tried to respond to the public's identified priorities here, which don't change too much from year to year, but in recent years have focused very, very much on the question of housing affordability. And as you've indicated, there's an awful lot in this budget that tries to address that problem. I think it's clear we have work to do on the arts and culture front. I don't think we can do it right now at this moment, but I think that the comments made by the people who made submissions to us could show us the direction that we need to look in to find some new strategies and also assess what's happening elsewhere. I won't say too much more about the fentanyl crisis, except to say that we're living in a period when, notwithstanding how much we all might like to sort of plan out some singular benchmark and just say, okay, I'm just going to keep it to inflation, and after that I don't have to worry about it, or okay, I'll just keep it to growth, and that's that. We face new challenges very regularly and at a profound level. We face them from climate change in terms of the investments we're trying to make in our regulatory regime to make the city more resilient. We face them with new technologies that are shaking the rental market, like short-term rentals. We face them in the fentanyl crisis right on the ground with the need to collect in a safe and appropriate way the thousands and thousands of needles that Coastal Health is distributing in an effort to try to maintain some access to health for people who are in that situation. I think that the comment that was made just a few minutes ago in the debate about where our ambulance paramedics fit in this situation needs to be clarified, and I'll stop there. It is not the case that QPBC or the ambulance paramedics are opposed to the City of Vancouver dealing with our responsibilities under the opioid crisis. And I think everybody in this room agrees that ambulance paramedics are a critical part of the healthcare system. Regrettably, they're not available to the degree that we all believe they should be. As we're having this debate, QPBC has sent out a release saying there are not enough ambulances to fulfill the need in Metro Vancouver. The provincial government's mismanagement of the system means that even existing ambulances aren't being used. Last Friday night, 19 out of 60 ambulances in Greater Vancouver were not in service because of inefficient use of the scheduling system by the ambulance service. That means that in the middle of a massive health crisis, nearly a third of Lower Mainland ambulances weren't available, while qualified paramedics weren't able to do their jobs. Now, no doubt, Minister Terry Lake will have a different perspective on that, but I want to tell this council and tell taxpayers that not a cent of the property tax increase proposed today will pay for a minute of ambulance service. That gap remains, and that gap needs to be filled, as Councillor Jang so eloquently said earlier, by a very much more determined and supportive effort by the provincial government to take resources and find resources wherever they have to meet the problems that we're facing, not just in Vancouver, but province-wide, and not just on the drug crisis, but in terms of homelessness as well. We often hear from Councillor Genova about the need and the weight that she put on the commitment to eliminate street homelessness in Vancouver. I hope that the provincial government deals as with the same kind of focus and the same kind of determination on the province-wide crisis that we now see in homelessness, because it's also part of this fentanyl issue that we're dealing with and so many other issues that are costing our taxpayers a great deal of money to put Band-Aids on as opposed to solve. So I want to thank the staff for all the work they did on this. Ms. Impey had to leave for personal reasons, but her and her entire team worked tirelessly year-round on this, and I thank them all for that, and also the other senior staff who are always available at the course of these discussions to fill us in on background on these questions. So thanks, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Meggs. And so we are on to the vote, and my understanding is finance staff are still looking at whether we can split recommendation G into subcomponents related to housing and childcare. So I'll await that, but we, in the meantime,
Mr. Mayor, may I?
Mr. City Manager.
Based on the request, staff are reworking those two recommendations to split the table. So if we could have just a few minutes to do that, we can get it to the clerks and get it up on the screen. So
okay.
If we just even took
we can
5-minute recess.
Is it going to be 5 minutes, or should we start voting on the balance?
We could have 10 minutes. That would allow us to get it written and get it to the clerk.
Okay, 10 minutes. Why don't we
could recess for in camera and conclude afterward if you'd like, or proceed as it is.
Let's take as brief a recess as is required. So let's say
7, always pushing
no more than
us,
10 minutes.
Okay.
No more than 10 minutes. If we can be
We'll
back
take a 7-minute recess, which means it'll be 10 minutes.
Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
Recess. I'll just ask council to stay close to the chamber, so we're ready to come back for the vote as soon as the language is ready. So council is recessed for the next few minutes, up to 10 minutes.
You were there. I made it possible.
Well, it's not right.
Okay, we're ready to get back to it here. We'll reconvene council. We've just done some, had staff working relentlessly away at reshaping the language to address separation between a couple of the items and recommendations on our 2017 budgets. That's for F and G. So, council, we're going to move to votes now. We are going to vote on, first of all, recommendations A through E plus H and I. Those can all be voted on together, and then we vote on F1, 2, and 3, and a G1, 2, and 3. And those will be capital budgets that staff have split into housing, childcare, and then the balance of the capital budgets as proposed in the original recommendations.
Just vote on A one at a time. Usually that's what we do. It's just more clear to us all. A, B, C, D. With all the changes and revisions today, I think more.
There have been no changes to A through E and H, and I has been added on as an amendment.
I would like to sever then B and C, please.
Okay, we can go through each of those then. And we'll do that. We'll separate into each letter, but we'll be doing F and G, the two components of the capital budget, we'll be doing separately at the end. Okay, we're ready to go here. First of all, with A on the 2017 budget. Councillor DeGenova, we're voting at this point. We are voting on all of the recommendations separately. That's what I've said it. I is a separate recommendation.
The understanding was that there is the I that has the other stuff in it. That's right. So that's right. I understand what you're saying. So there is the change in that one. So that's embedded. Sorry. Yep, that's correct. So there is the revised motion by Councillor Louis still at the end. We don't have this in front of us, the full motion, so it's challenging for us to know.
All of the motions, A through E and H, are as written in the package. I, we already voted on as an amendment that was added, and F and G are about to come on screen because staff have just reworded them. So we'll start with A, and everyone can vote on A. And Councillor Meggs, are you? There we go. Okay, 11 votes in, 8 in favor, 3 in opposition. Ball, Affleck, and DeGenova opposed on A. It carries 8-3. And we're on to B. The Vancouver Board of Parks and Recreation operating budget. We have 11 votes all in favor on that one. Unanimous support. We're on to C, which is the Property Endowment Fund operating budget. We have 11 votes all in favor on C. So we move to D, which we're onto the capital budget now. That's an increase of about 97 million to the capital plan. 2 opposed, 11 votes, 9 in favor, 2 opposed. Affleck and DeGenova are opposed. Okay. We change that later. Okay, we'll change that later. So that is a 10-1 with only Affleck opposed. Okay, and we go to E, which is the reallocation of a $6 million debenture borrowing authority on the capital plan. And Okay, we have 9 in favor and 2 opposed. Affleck and DeGenova opposed on the borrowing for public safety, public works, and parks and recreation. So we're on to H, which is all available programs from senior levels of government and other entities to leverage additional funding to support the city's capital and operating plans. That's H, recommendation H. And Councillor DeGenova, are you voting on this one? There's no revision. It's as written in. Okay, and that carries unanimously, 11 votes in favor. And I, which was approved as an amendment earlier today. Councillor Ball, are you? There you go. Okay. So we've got unanimous support on I as well. Okay, so that means we're down to the last 2, which are F and G. So F, we'll split both of these into 3, F1, F2, and F3. And council has that on screen now. So F1 separates the housing component of capital projects on funding sources. So essentially what finance staff have done is separate housing into F and G1, childcare capital into F2 and G2, and then the balance of the capital projects are in F3. Correct? F3 is the total. It includes F1 and F2. Okay, so we will start with F1. Voting on F1, which is the housing capital dollars. Councillor Louis. So we have 10 in favor and Councillor Affleck in opposition on housing. And we're on to F2, which is childcare capital. We have unanimous support there, 11 votes in favor. And we're on to F3, which is the total on the capital. And we have 10 in favor and 1 Councillor Affleck opposed on that. So we have concluded on the 3 Fs, and now we're on to G1. Which again splits us into, these are the expenditures for housing first, G1, and then childcare is G2, and then the total is G3. So we'll go to G1 first, the $80 million housing capital budget. We have 10 in favor, 1 opposed. Councillor Affleck opposed on that one. And we're on to G2. Childcare capital, 14.6 million. All 11 votes are in favor. Unanimous support on childcare. And now the total expenditures for capital, including housing and childcare. Just waiting for Reimer and Meggs. Okay, we've got 10 in favor and 1 opposed. Councillor Affleck opposed on the final piece of capital. And that means we have approved our 2017 budgets for capital and operating. Thanks again. Congratulations to staff. Thank you, council, for all the hard work. And we have concluded on our 2017 budget. We've approved it, and we are going to take a break now for in-camera meeting. We'll be back at 2 o'clock to finish council business.